Welcome back, and once again, our thanks to Manoj and all the team at India Inc. for bringing us all together for this India Global Week. We meet virtually, but I think it's fair to say so much great content, so much great thought and debate and discussion that we've had over the past couple of days. That continues, of course, throughout today and tomorrow. Now, quite a pertinent issue when we talk about being the revival, because as the global economy comes out of the post-COVID pandemic, governments around the world are looking at ways to try and revive their economies. Many of them are providing stimulus, but big questions, is it enough, and is it being spent in the right place? Now, private sector investment, of course, will play a huge role in this, in keeping the economy ticking over. It can't all be reliant on government spending. But governments are injecting cash with reform and also with stimulus packages in certain industries and certain sectors. In India, that particularly is focused around industries including electronics, pharmaceuticals, textiles, food processing. So what does that mean as far as India as a global investment opportunity? Or are there opportunities there for other firms to get involved and take a proportion of some of that stimulus and get a share of that growth? So to discuss that with me, a great panel this afternoon, Deepak Bagla, who is the Chief Executive of Invest in India. That's the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency that is promoted by the government of India. His career spanning 3 decades that began with the World Bank in Washington, DC. And also Sanjay Nayar, who is a partner and Chief Executive at KKR. He joined KKR back in 2009 and is also a member of the Asian Investment Committee and Asia Portfolio Management Committee. Good morning or good afternoon to you both. It's lovely to see you, and thanks for joining us on this panel. Deepak, maybe let me start with you, because look, lots of opportunities as economies start to recover. They may be patchy, they may be uncertain, but certainly there are opportunities. Give me a sense of where we are and where you see this growth coming.
Thank you, Ben, to be with you, and thank you for calling us today. I think what this pandemic has done, and let me just first get back to that. Today we are on day 109 of the most unprecedented lockdown ever in human history. And I think one of the 2 interesting trends, which is what I want to speak about, and one is this entire underlying trend of reshoring of supply chains. And that is emerging from a trend which was about de-risking. We had all forgotten how important de-risking was in our regular business lines. And what COVID has done, it has amplified and catalyzed that. So from that perspective, I must say, and let me say, what is that trend which I speak about? March 2020, that is the close of my financial year, I closed with an FDI of $74 billion. That's the highest ever FDI India has got in its history. And let it put me more in perspective. This is when global FDI went down by 7% during the past 1 year. Our FDI went up by 18%. And why I'm saying, and I'm bringing this up, is because what I see now is an amplification and catalyzing of that trend. And I've already seen that in the past 66 days. The number of business requests I'm getting from across the globe, across sectors, has gone up tremendously to a point where I'll have to do a 3x of my team in the next 6 months. And by the way, let me put it in perspective again. I've done over 250,000 business requests from 109 countries across 47 sectors. On the very point, on this entire package which is coming out from the government and the focus of the government to revive it, frankly, as we all know, and I really like that statement that we are all in the same storm, but we are in different boats. And we don't know which one we are all in. And frankly, none of us really know where we are in this storm too. Are we at the beginning, in the middle, or the end, and how this virus behaves every day? But let me give you 1 or 2 quick examples. We started 30th March with not even a single PPE in India. Today, I'm the 2nd largest exporter of PPEs in the world. And I'll tell you where that is coming from. That is coming from the remarkable resilience of Indian business to be nimble and to be able to pivot their business lines. And a large part of that is coming from my MSMEs. And that is where, if you look at a large part of the fiscal and the other stimulus which has come from the government, both on the demand side and the supply side, has been focused on that segment. And before I give it to Sanjay, let me give you a quick statistic. Everybody is asking, how fast do we get out of this one? Will it be a U? Will it be a V? Will it be a bathtub? But let me give you a quick statistic of June. And we are in moratorium. We've given a special moratorium, especially for all our MSMEs and startups where the financial repayments are concerned. In the month of June, MSME collections themselves were 65%. In fact, let me tell you another one. Microfinance started the month of June with 60% collection, ended the month with 85%. This is an amazing sense to show the recovery. And my last point, Sanjay, before I give it to you, the big question now, how fast do we get out of it? Let me put it again in perspective for you. India is divided into 729 administrative districts. This is how the governance happens in each of those districts. In 449 of these 729, I have less than 50 cases. In fact, in 45 of them, I have a zero case. It's only in 26 districts that I have over 1,000 cases. And actually, 86% of my entire cases today, as I speak to you, on day 109, would be concisely put into 3 states of India. Mind you, I have 28 states and 9 other additional union territories and special territories. What that means is that the government's decision for that early lockdown is now paying dividends. And the faster we've been able to contain it, the better we've been able to contain it, the faster we'll get out of it. And what I am ready in trying to point out is that our positioning of being the fastest growing large economy on the planet, we are all set to recoup that position. And when I get a chance later, I'll tell you what are the other things which are happening in the government to ensure that we're going to be on that track as fast as possible and speed up that growth. Sanjay?
Yeah, Sanjay, I want to bring you in at this point, actually, because, look, it's interesting. Deepak lays out a picture there of investment that maybe just simply paused. There are no long-term implications here. There is no prolonged downturn. He paints a picture of an economy ready to bounce back. Is that how you see it too?
Yeah, I mean, more or less, I do see it that way. But let me give you a perspective from a private investor's point of view. And while I represent the private equity industry, I think I can speak for just private in general. I think one of the things that attracts investment into India and has been extremely enthusing for all of us is the macroeconomic stability. So to the question you raised earlier about the stimulus, well, one can say it wasn't a big amount, but I think it was a very disciplined amount. It was within the constraints of the current finances of the government, and it was extremely well targeted. So that's number one, and that I think preserves macroeconomic stability, which is what enthuses foreign investors and private investors. Number two, I think Deepak spoke about the growth and the demographics, so I won't repeat that, but that is huge. But the third thing, I think, which attracts capital here and will give you a fairly good idea of the ability to bounce back is the entrepreneurial spirit that's here. And I think a lot of that exists actually in the MSME and the SME sector. And here I want to offer a little different perspective. I would wish and I would hope that the larger private sector also contributes wholeheartedly to the recovery. And it takes a lot of doing to do that. Obviously, there are some groups that are rapidly deleveraging, reinvesting, and there are quite a few who are not doing so. And I think it's going to take both hands to clap. You need the government to spend more, which they are doing through the infrastructure spend and the public sector, but you also need the large private sector to spend. So while the entrepreneurial spirit is intact, and we're seeing a lot of the smaller business people capitalize on this, I think we need the large private houses to contribute as well. And the final point, I think, is that, look, I think the way of doing business in India has changed. With this government for the last 6 years, the way business is done is very much above board. I think there is a sincere attempt to make in India, to doing business in India easier. I don't think we are there as yet. And I think Deepak, as a co-panelist, is one of the people responsible for helping us have single stop windows, try to get more investments in a more easier way. But I think still a long way to go. And I'm sure we should discuss that. But boy, if you get those two things right, I think you got the first one right, which is music to our ears, which is doing business here today is much cleaner, much simpler. If you can get the ease aspect of it going as well, I think you can attract a lot of private capital. So I'm trying to answer two of your questions, Ben. One is Can we bounce back? I think yes, but we need a few of these things to happen quickly. And this is the catalytic moment. Either we can make it an excuse or we can make it a catalyst to make these changes. And of course, the second one is I think we have macroeconomic stability, which is at the cost of not a huge stimulus, but a very well-targeted stimulus.
Yeah, and exactly that thought is where it takes us. Deepak, let me talk to you about those stimulus measures. In your view, are they enough given the scale of the crisis that is facing the world and facing every economy right now? And are they focused in the right sectors at the right sort of businesses?
Ben, first, measures itself, let's understand that the entire world is challenged. That entire pie out of which you give out has been grossly diminished everywhere. Can more be done? Always. There can always be more be done. But what could be possible and what has been possible, has it been directed in the right manner? To a large extent, I would say, yes, that is where it ought to be. And I'll tell you why do I say that. One is I have 65 million MSMEs. They are the engine of my growth. 30% of my GDP comes from there. The amazing thing about Indian MSMEs is, one, they are the most efficient users of capital. Every dollar or rupee goes into them has the highest velocity created in the economy, both in terms of the velocity of money as well as the velocity of investment. Second is the ability of my MSMEs to be agile and nimble, which is what I mentioned to you about on the PPE side. Their ability to come back is much faster. And essentially also look at it. MSMEs do not have deep pockets. For them, the question is not just going to be of liquidity. The question is solvency. So you have to take care of that element too. And from that perspective, and that is where the bulk of my population gets their jobs. And that's where it's all happening. So I think that was very well directed, that the resources which you have, you put in at a place where they're going to be best used, where you're going to see quick results and fast results. I actually, one more thing, and where a large part of my MSME also gets powered from, is one very big important point which has come. You know that 70% of my population lives in small towns and villages, which is close to about 10 to 11% of the world's population. A lot of agriculture support and support required from them is also there. The agriculture points we've got now, the crop which just got harvested, I had an increase in 13%. The crop which is now getting into sowing is going up by 11%. That kicker is a huge one, and that is where we are seeing domestic sale demands for two-wheelers, for tractors, for fertilizers, for pesticides going up again. And very interestingly, FMCG figures for June, year on year, are the same as we've caught up with what we had last time. So there's some very interesting, not just green shoots, but all these things are coming into an impact where they are most needed and going to show you a quick recovery. I did want to pick up on Sanjay's point on the ease of doing business. You know, what this government has done is utilize this pandemic to create it into an opportunity. In the past 60 days, you've had the most unprecedented reforms announced ever in our history, which include reforms on things which had not been touched, for example, labor reforms. You now have a number of plug-and-play facilities which are being put up for business in India. Clusters are being developed, and a single window has been created under the Cabinet Secretary for the first time to give approvals to any fast-track approvals for any projects which are coming. These are huge changes of the ease of doing business. And in fact, I must tell you that we are now going through a series where the states are meeting the investors directly. I have states in India, Ben, where the single window for an investor is rated amongst the best in the world. They have deemed clearances that you can go to them within 15 or 30 days, you will get all clearances. And let me give you a remarkable point. It was pointed out by one of the state governments. If the deemed clearance has to be done within 30 days, for every day's delay, that government official's personal account is debited. Nowhere else in the world is that an example. That is how fast India is changing in this new environment and making it easier as an investor journey.
Yeah, and I want to ask Sanjay about that. Are you reassured, Sanjay, by what you've heard or what you've seen so far of these reforms, that doing business will be easier? Because, look, as we heard there from Deepak, business is nimble, it is efficient, it is adapting to change. But the bit they need help with is that ease of doing business. It's the paperwork, the bureaucracy. Are you reassured by what you've heard and seen?
Yeah, look, through the investments we have in India, we hear of all of this. There is no doubt things are changing. And as I mentioned, this is an opportunity, and I think the government is capitalizing on it. And I think I agree with all of that. But there are two important aspects you have to keep in mind to make this really scaled up and to make it very large. With some of the Southeast Asian countries have done a fantastic job. There are two important ingredients. One is the availability of local capital. You can't depend on foreign capital all the time. We really have to dig deep and find where is the long duration risk capital in this country. Not just debt capital, but equity capital. And I think, the second point is a lot of businesses today do get their money in one way or another from the government agencies. Out there in the supply chain, somewhere you have to get your money from the government. It comes through infrastructure, it comes in healthcare, it comes in, some of the subsidies that go into payments. And payments, I think the governments will have to make sure, within their constraints, have to make sure that the money flow as owed by the governments have to come on time. Because you can't expect these MSMEs and SMEs, which I agree with Deepak, are the backbone of this country. And as I said, they are the real entrepreneurs who have demonstrated the rebound, but they need the cash flows. So two things are very critical, and I think both can be fixed. I think I'm hearing a lot of anecdotes of money coming back in the system. The government, I think, is making sure they're able to pay their dues on time. And I think we just need to figure out solutions, which I'm hoping, either with Deepak's help, Ministry of Finance and others, we have to now have creative ideas to unlock local savings. There is no dearth of local savings. Either they're lying trapped in insurance and pension, or they are lying trapped in black money. You've got to now have innovative schemes to bring all of this out. I think now is the time. So if you get capital, you've got the ease of doing business, you've got the entrepreneurial spirit, you've got a great opportunity of growth. I think you're really set up for success.
We don't have that much time, but Deepak, explain to me now, if an organization is watching this somewhere in the world and they think, look, I've had my fingers burned, I'm worried about investing, I don't know what demand will look like, I don't know what the global economy is going to look like, why would they choose India to invest?
Let me tell you who is looking at India to invest. And when I told you I need to do a 3x of my team, remember I spoke to you about de-risking. I think everybody is today looking to reshore their businesses and operations and supply chains, and also to shorten the supply chains. And they will go closer to where the market is. My only point, tell me one market in the free democratic world for the next 100 years where you will have 1.5 billion customers within one national geographic boundary and one of the fastest growing economies on the planet.
And Ben, just to substantiate that, the first 5 months or 6 months of this year, India has seen 25 billion in private equity alone. I mean, we put in about 2.2 in just last 7 weeks. But as a community, it's 25 billion. In COVID time, in the middle of COVID, difficult to do diligence, difficult to travel, difficult to do meetings. 25 billion. It's more than 50% of last year. So it tells you that there is availability of capital, there is enthusiasm, and I think there's a great opportunity for India to really grab that opportunity.
Our time is up, I'm afraid. We're going to talk more about this. There's another couple of panels this afternoon looking at investing, particularly in India, and what opportunities it offers. We're also going to look at the equity market as well and work out where the best bets may be. But for now, I'm really grateful for your time. Deepak and Sanjay, thanks for explaining some of those issues there. Really fascinating discussion. And to hear those numbers really does put it into context, doesn't it, about the opportunities that can be had. And as you say, are already in place. So thank you to both Deepak Bagla there and Sanjay Nayar. And now do stay with us. As we said, much more coming up on this stream. We're going to talk about investing in the stock market in India, where those opportunities might be, and also about making India that favourable destination for foreign investment. And we'll continue that conversation right after this. See you soon.